Yang Qian has traveled to the world of the Legend of Immortal Cultivation and can enter the spiritual realm at the beginning. Grasp the gate of heaven and earth. Yang Qian shuttles back and forth between the human and spiritual realms. Senior brother Yang, why do you also have the Xu Tian Ding? Junior brother Han, this is the Xu Huang Ding. Your one is the mother Ding, and mine is the public Ding. Erlengzi was shocked. He looked at the two identical tripods and fell into a stupor. Until Yang Qian took out a light yellow small bottle, Han Li's face immediately turned pale, as if struck by lightning. Keywords of the novel. Mortal. At the beginning, I can enter the spiritual realm without a pop-up window. Mortal. At the beginning, I can enter the spiritual realm. Download the full text of the text. Mortal. At the beginning, I can enter the latest chapters of the spiritual realm to read. Chapter 1. Directly entering the spirit realm at the beginning. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 1. Directly entering the spirit realm at the beginning spiritual realm. Yang Qian, dressed in gray clothes and linen robes, stood calmly at a low mound. Lift your head and look at 3 dazzling suns and 4 hazy moons in the sky. I can't help but recall my experiences since traveling. Yes, Yang Qian has traveled through. Arrived in the world of mortal cultivation. After years of fighting, he entered the 7 profound gates and became a disciple of the offering hall. Yang Qian pondered leisurely. Han Pao Pao, Xu Tian Ding, Xian Tian Zhan Ling Jian, Zhang Tian Ping. This world, although full of opportunities, is full of dangers. But Yang Qian also has his own trump card. Coming through time, how can one be empty-handed? Gold fingers naturally exist. The gateway to the universe. You can ignore cultivation and boundaries from the human realm, open a door, and directly shuttle to the spiritual realm. When Yang Qian first used the gate of heaven and earth, he was horrified as if he had come from a previous life to the mortal world. After the first shuttle, Yang Qian began not knowing where the world behind the door was. But when he lifted his face and saw the scenery in the sky, he determined the location of the territory. After all, I have read the Mortal Cultivation legend several times before and after. Across from the gate of Qiankuan, it turns out to be the legendary target of the spiritual realm, which is the ascent of cultivators in the human realm. Since then, Yang Qian has been using the gates of heaven and earth for over a decade, traveling back and forth from the human realm to the spiritual realm, constantly seeking opportunities. Unfortunately, during a sect recruitment, it was discovered that there were no spiritual roots in oneself. At first, Yang Qian was still a bit depressed. However, thinking of my own gateway to the universe, as well as the various divine treasures and techniques in the spiritual realm, I am once again full of confidence. It is rumored that the powerful cultivators of the human and demon races in the spiritual realm, combined with the later Jing Tian, existed. Emperor Tianyuan, one of the 3 emperors. It's not just about cultivating the diamond technique from a body with no spiritual roots, then in the wilderness, consuming heavenly and earthly treasures, giving birth to spiritual roots, and leaping to become the top pillar of the human and demon tribes. There is ultimately a way out. The diamond technique. Yang Qian is preparing to first cultivate ordinary martial arts, and then slowly map it out. Just using the gate of heaven and earth to shuttle to the spiritual realm has time limitations. With the improvement of body cultivation, I have been staying in the spiritual realm for half a month since I first spent 1 day, then 2 or 3 days, and now after practicing the first layer of the diamond technique. In the future, if there is a chance to condense magical power, the time spent in the spiritual realm may be even longer. These few times I have traveled to the spiritual realm. After many unsuccessful attempts, Yang Qian finally found out about his own region. Located in the territory of Tianyuan, between the human and demon tribes. Yang Qian followed the caravan of mortals intermittently, wandering through multiple cities without any danger. He learned the language of the spiritual realm, and even by chance, he obtained the first layer of the famous body refining secret technique in the spiritual realm. The diamond technique. After 3 years of continuous cultivation in the human and spiritual realms, I finally successfully mastered the first level of the diamond technique. Subsequently, he diligently practiced and endured the various pains of refining his body. The progress of the Vajra technique advanced rapidly, and he was not far from the first level of great achievement. At present, at the age of 18, Yang Qian, with this body refining technique, can rival the ordinary 10-level cultivators of qi refining. Even in the spiritual realm, in a battle with the 13-level cultivators of qi refining, he was able to suffer minor damage and retreat completely, which surprised many ordinary body refining practitioners in the team. At this moment, after receiving the small green bottle, Erlengzi should also have cultivation in the 8th or 9th level of the qi refining period. Yang Qian pondered to himself. In the 7 Xian men, Yang Qian did not deliberately approach Han Li. Just quietly following Han Li's movements, although they met, they could only be considered nodding acquaintances. Moreover, in recent years, I have also found traces of the palm heavenly bottle in the Divine Hand Valley. However, no matter how I search, I have found nothing, both openly and secretly. In the end, I had to give up. The empty bottle of the heavenly vase, I'm afraid I'll have no chance. No problem, with the help of the gate of heaven and earth, future achievements may not necessarily be lower than those of Erlengzi. Yang Qian chest has a bold and imposing demeanor. Erlengzi is cheating, isn't he? While pondering, a heavy voice came over. Brother Yang, the caravan has already begun to gather. Don't delay the hour, a bearded man walked over and said in a low voice. This person was dressed in shiny metal armor, tightly wrapped all over, with only one face visible. On the other hand, Yang Qian, despite his handsome appearance, was covered in coarse linen robes all over his body, with only a few bone fragments shining faintly, covering several vital points. Brother Yan Bin, it was my negligence. Yang Qian arched his hand apologetically and followed behind Yan Bin, walking towards the nearby team. Tiandong Trading Company is one of the 3 major trading companies within the territory of Tianyuan. Xiu Bearded Great Han was the captain of a guard team under the Tiandong Trading Company. This time, he escorted a batch of valuable supplies to Anyuan City. Yang Qian pondered deeply. As they walked, their faces were full of smiles as they greeted the several guards passing by, all of whom were obviously acquaintances. Brother Yang, last time we parted ways, it was a bit sudden. This time, we should have a good drink. The middle-aged man with a white face laughed heartily. Brother Yang, I heard of your impressive achievements and was able to face a cultivator on the 13th level of the qi refining period, retreating completely. It's really impressive. A somewhat shy young man walked over. Yeah, Brother Yang's diamond technique, I'm afraid it's already completed in the first layer. It's almost time to cultivate the second layer. Several mortals, equally devoid of spiritual power, walked over and had a warm conversation with Yang Qian. For people like them who lack spiritual roots and are unable to cultivate immortals, refining their body is the only way. You're exaggerating. I'm just a bit talented in refining my body. I'm lucky enough to cultivate the first level of the diamond technique, but as for the second level, it's still far away. Yang Qian smiled and clenched his fists, not paying much attention to everyone's praise. Even in the human realm, cultivators during the qi refining period are just cannon fodder-like beings, let alone in the spiritual realm of this higher plane. Although the number of mortals still far exceeds that of cultivators and cultivators, it is only equivalent to the first level of the high-level diamond technique in the qi refining period. In Yang Qian's view, there is nothing to be proud of. Humph. The young man with a hoarse face not far away let out a cold snort of dissatisfaction, and a heavy nasal sound reached the ears of Yang Qian and others. But he's just a body refiner practicing the diamond technique, there's nothing to boast about. The young man with a hoarse face sneered and pursed his lips, looking disdainfully at Yang Qian before turning around and walking towards the team. Su Ming, you. The middle-aged man with white face felt a little angry upon hearing this. Brother Wu, don't worry about him, Yang Qian raised his hand and chuckled lightly. Su Ming was so arrogant and domineering in our business team, not only because he had an uncle who was a cultivator in the early days of building a foundation, said some shy young man, who couldn't help but make Yang Qian look slightly sideways. Luo Xiaochuan, this kid, was scolded by Su Ming a few days ago due to miscellaneous matters. The middle-aged man surnamed Wu leaned over and explained in a low voice when he saw Yang Qian's puzzled face. I'm afraid it's not just a reprimand. Yang Qian raised his eyebrows and first looked at Luo Xiaochuan's unwilling expression, then turned his head to gaze at Su Ming's back. Let out a deep sigh. Whether it's a mortal or a cultivator. Whether in the human realm or the spiritual realm. Where there are people, there are rivers and lakes. End of this chapter. Chapter 2. Sandworm and Beast Group. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 2 Sandworm and Beast Group. The team of Tiandong Trading Company slowly moved forward. Yan Bin, a bearded man, stood in front of him. Underneath his seat was a blue giant wolf-like monster with a shiny right angle on its head. Its waist and limbs were thick and large, wrapped in thick armor, about 2 zhang high, and its face was extremely fierce. Behind Yan Bin was a huge turtle that was 4 or 5 zhang tall and 7 or 8 zhang long. On top of the shell of the giant turtle, there is a carriage made of unknown wood in dark blue color. In front of the carriage, there is another seat, and an old man with a withered face sits on the chair, like a coachman, but he sits quietly with his eyes closed, ignoring the giant turtle beneath him. Around the giant turtle, there were more than 20 people, just like Yan Bin, wearing armor and straddling wolf-shaped beasts. Each person also carried a weapon like a wolf's tooth stick, with the front half full of sharp spikes and extremely sturdy. Among them, the middle-aged man surnamed Wu and Su Ming are among this silver-armored team. Going further, there is a winding transportation team, about 2 miles long. One giant turtle after another, held at a distance by several guards wearing silver armor. Yang Qian glanced casually and saw at least 40 or 50 giant turtles. Above the turtle shell, there is a cargo box made of unknown wood, bulging and bulging. The transported goods are covered by unknown animal skins, making it difficult to see the condition of the goods inside. I heard that these are the skins of level 5 demon beasts, which can block the divine power of low-level cultivators. Due to his lack of spiritual roots and divine consciousness, Yang Qian was not clear about the true power of this unknown animal skin. Based on past escort experiences, this animal skin material, which can block the spiritual consciousness of cultivators below the stage of pill formation, was distributed by the headquarters of the Tiandong Trading Company. As for cultivators like Yang Qian, whose strength is slightly inferior, they are located at the end of the entire escort team. Including Luo Xiaochuan. Up and down, there were only a few vital points covered with several bone fragments shining faintly. The dismounted mount, although almost indistinguishable from the blue giant wolf in front, differed significantly in size, only about 1 zhang tall. A wolf-shaped giant beast that is 2 or 3 zhang tall, as if it were a young cub. Yang Qian didn't pay much attention to this and had been pondering the cultivation threshold of the diamond technique in his heart. According to the original work, the Vajra technique is a technique in the human world called the Mingwang technique. The secret technique of the Ming King's secret technique in the human world should be in the treasure trove of a destitute family in the Great Jin dynasty. If there is no gateway to heaven and earth, if one wants to cross the Tianlong grassland, it is simply seeking their own way out, and it may be difficult for even the state of you to leave. Fortunately, I obtained the original version of the Mingwang technique. The diamond technique. Yang Qian exclaimed in his heart that luck had finally given him a path to become stronger. Although the cultivation of the diamond technique is fraught with numerous difficulties, and one must constantly endure the agony of meridians. Yang Qian couldn't help but want to give up several times. But considering that I currently have no spiritual roots, if I want to learn from the Yuan Xinhuang of that day, go to the wilderness, search for heavenly and earthly treasures, and have a way to protect myself, I must practice this Vajra technique. There is no other choice. It's almost there. The first layer is about to be completed. As long as I complete this escort mission, not only will the Tiandong Trading Company promise me the mnemonic of the second layer of diamond technique, but I will also receive a wolf tooth stick. Yang Qian felt a slight excitement in his heart. The beginning of everything is difficult, suffering from the lack of spiritual roots. For several years, I have endured the pain of practicing the diamond technique, and finally I am about to achieve the first level of success. As long as I obtain the wolf tooth stick weapon again and return to the 7 profound gates of the human world, I should be invincible. Even if Master Jin Guang comes, with his cultivation level, he can forcibly break open his protective gold shield. Master Jin Guang, this dwarf, has several good things in his hands. Flying sword talisman treasure, ascension order. Even if you can't use it yourself, you can exchange it for spirit stones and elixirs. Yang Qian's face was calm, but his heart had already begun planning how to use the things of the golden light dwarf to manipulate Erlengzi. With a movement in his expression, a childish sound came to his ears. Brother Yang. Luo Xiaochuan turned his head to look at the distant wasteland and asked with a complex expression, do we, ordinary people without spiritual roots, really have to live a mediocre life like this? Upon hearing this, Yang Qian remained silent for a moment and said without looking back, Brother Xiaochuan, have you forgotten about the famous Holy Emperor among our human race? Holy Emperor, who is also an ordinary person, even without spiritual roots, has still reached the current level and become one of the 3 emperors. Don't be discouraged by this. Upon hearing this, Luo Xiaochuan's eyes lit up slightly, as if he had seen the dawn again, but the next moment he lowered his head again. Your Highness, is it something I can compare with? Yang Qian smiled slightly, just as he was about to speak a few words of comfort, a sudden and rapid cry of birds came from the sky. Caught everyone's attention. The red spirit sparrow actually issued a warning, this trip was not as easy as imagined. Yang Qian narrowed his eyes slightly and looked up. I saw a big, fiery red bird with a red fist all over, hovering in the sky about 30 or 40 feet above the ground, its beak constantly emitting a pleasant and clear sound. Although the sound was not loud, it continued to echo through the clouds, and could be heard clearly within a radius of 2 or 3 miles. The bearded man in front suddenly raised his hand and shouted loudly, "Be on guard." The whole team quickly stopped, and the giant turtle behind Yan Bin shook its head and lay in place. Inside the carriage, there seemed to be 2 surprised and startled sounds, followed by a rather crisp Jiaozha voice. Uncle Lin, what happened? It's the sandworm beast led by the insect demon, said the old man, who stared ahead like a carriage driver without looking back. The carriage instantly quieted down, and only a few faint words could be heard from the woman's conversation. Miss, don't worry, it's just a pack of sand, insects, and beasts. After a short while, there was no movement. But after only a few breaths, the leader of the guard team, Yan Bin, suddenly turned ugly. It's not just a group of sandworms. That's a low-level insect demon. The members of the guard were all surprised when they looked at them. Yang Qian's face in the rear showed surprise, although not in chaos, he only looked at the dense herds of animals with great interest. After Han Li ascended to the spiritual realm, he encountered the sandworm beast, which he had only seen for the first time. There are foundation-building cultivators and several powerful body-refining practitioners in the team, which should be safe and sound. In front of the convoy, Yan Bin pondered on ways to deal with it. Low-level insect demon, this is a bit tricky, and next to this insect demon, it's not an ordinary sand insect beast. Judging from its appearance, it's obviously a mutated insect beast. The middle-aged man with a white face leaned over, who was a man surnamed Wu. The two Taoist priests of Ghost Mountain have already made it clear that they will not take action until the insects and beasts attack them. Yan Bin stroked the curled beard on his cheeks and couldn't help but frown. Everyone looked at each other, hiring cultivators from the Ghost Mountain, but it was decided by the team leader. In this situation, what should be done? He. On the other side, Su Ming, who was standing with his shoulders hugged, sneered and said, I've already told you not to hire the stinky Taoist priests from Gosazi Mountain. Their breaking of rules may harm us at a critical moment. End of this chapter. Chapter 3. Spiritual Tools and the Lion Strider Beast. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 3 Spiritual Tools and the Lion Strider Beast. As soon as the man surnamed Wu heard this, his eyebrows arched and he was about to refute a few words. However, he opened his mouth and realized that Su Ming's words seemed to have some truth. Unable to resist, he turned his gaze to the bearded man. Yan Bin glanced around at the expressions of the crowd, pondered for a moment, then sighed and said, it was Yan's negligence. I thought this trip was approaching on Yuan City, and I was sure to arrive smoothly. So I hired the Taoist priest from Gozao Mountain. This matter cannot be blamed for the two Taoist priests not wanting to take action. I only blame Yan for encountering a low-level insect beast. After listening, the members of the escort team had different expressions, but they wisely remained silent. Since the captain has already reflected and blamed himself, others will not blame themselves. After all, they still have to work together in the same team. Brothers, don't worry. For this sudden appearance of a low-level insect demon, the shop elder has already prepared a contingency plan. Yan Bin called out and first arranged a few people to guard in front of the team. Then he brought the man surnamed Wu and Su Ming to the first giant turtle. Miss Yun Yan, the incident happened suddenly. Please follow us and release that thing. The bearded man clasped his fists and said in a deep voice. So, according to Captain Yan's words, Xianer, you guys can come with me and broaden your horizons. The sweet and melodious voice of the young girl came from the carriage. Then, a white and delicate palm pushed open the carriage door, and a long-haired girl wearing a light green dress walked down from it, with the other hand pinching the hem of her skirt. On the feet, a pair of green embroidered shoes embroidered with ancient patterns. Looking up again. The waist and limbs are slender, and the skin is as thick as cream. His face remained calm, with a gentle smile at the corner of his mouth. Just looking at its appearance, it is truly disappointing. It can only be considered as a middle-class talent, and compared to the four white-clad maids behind her, there is no stunning feeling. However, Yan Bin and others dare not slack off, and they all bowed their hands to signal. Yun Yan nodded with a faint smile and walked towards a giant turtle behind with four maids. Yan Bin glanced at the man surnamed Wu and Su Ming, and coincidentally followed them. Yang Qian narrowed his eyes slightly and stared calmly at the movements of everyone. The girl in the green dress named Yun Yan, whom I have seen several times myself, is said to be a descendant of the Jidan period steward in the Tiandong business. It is not surprising that everyone treated her so carefully in this city area filled with mortals. The cultivator of the Jidan period can already be considered a little master. Roar, a piercing roar brought back Yang Qian's thoughts. Following the sound, Yang Qian raised his eyebrows. I saw several people, including Yun Yan, Yan Bin, and Su Ming, gathered around a giant turtle, and the four white-clad maids were also prominently listed. There are also two elderly people wearing Taoist robes next to them, both of whom have an indifferent expression and look like cultivators from the Gosazi Mountain. Above the giant turtle, like other carriages, was covered with a layer of jet black fur, making it impossible to see what was inside. Yun Yan stood under the carriage with a solemn expression, looking up at the carriage that was 3 or 4 zhang high. He extended his white wrist and flipped his hand to take out a blue flute. On the surface of this flute, there seems to be a crystal-clear rune flowing, but it is actually a magical tool. I don't know if it's a low-level magic tool or a higher quality one. Yang Qian gazed intently, and at this moment, the cloud, smoke, and sandalwood clasps were lightly lifted, reciting words in his mouth. A faint blue fluorescence appeared on his bright wrist. Fortunately, the distance was not far, and Yang Qian could see it clearly. On Yun Yan's wrist, there was a fiery red bracelet set with 5 or 6 small stones of different colors, shining brightly. It should be fragments of spirit stones. Spiritual tools. Yang Qian's heart moved. Ordinary people, due to the lack of magic, can only use specially made spiritual tools, and Yun Yan's bracelet is the key to spiritual tool stimulation. Yang Qian has observed several times before that even if it is a mortal body, as long as it is equipped with special spirit tool gloves, it can easily use spirit tools that are comparable to low-level magic tools, and even storage bags can be used as space treasures. In this way, as mentioned in the original work, the cultivation of a cultivator to great success is comparable to that of a cultivator in the period of alchemy or even the period of primordial baby, which is indeed somewhat reasonable. However, if the spiritual energy of the spirit stone in the spiritual tool is depleted, the tool will also lose its effectiveness, and the cultivator may be in danger. The diamond technique has reached its ultimate level of cultivation. With only physical strength, one can remain invincible against cultivators like Zhan Yuanying. Only then will there be a glimmer of self-protection within the spiritual realm. Yang Qian pondered for a moment. The carriage on the giant turtle suddenly underwent astonishing changes. The black animal skin that was originally covered on the carriage flew up with a whoosh. "Be careful." Yan Bin clanged and pulled out a huge wolf tooth stick inlaid with yellow spirit stones, calling out to everyone around him. He protected several young girls, including Yun Yan, in the center of the crowd. "It's okay, the strider lion beast has been controlled by the Yin flute. Don't worry, everyone." Unlike Yan Bin and others' panic, Yun Yan remained calm and raised his hand to stop the protective actions of the 4 white-clad maids. The commotion here naturally caught everyone's attention. While on guard, they occasionally turned around to see the true face of the strider lion beast. Yang Qian calmly looked over. There seems to be no significant difference between the striding lion and the ordinary lion, except for its bright red eyes, ferocious appearance, sharp fangs, and 2 huge claws, violently shaking the cage in the carriage. Squeak, squeak. The violent shaking of the carriage made Yan Bin and others couldn't help but change their faces. Looking at the gaze of the striding lion beast, there was a faint hint of fear. Yun Yan held the blue flute in both hands and handed it to Sakura's lips. She opened her mouth slightly, took a deep breath, and began to play. A bracelet filled with small spiritual stones on its wrist suddenly bloomed with spiritual light, and a strong spiritual energy poured into the blue flute it held. The lingering sound lingers on the beam, like the sound of heaven. Whether it was Yan Bin, Su Ming, and others, or the 2 old Taoist priests from Ghost Mountain, as well as the accompanying personnel in the convoy, upon hearing the sound of this wave, they all felt calm and composed, and their originally chaotic hearts calmed down. Yang Qian's face was slightly surprised. This magical tool can actually affect the cultivator's mind and spirit. It is truly extraordinary. Leader Yan, this striding lion beast, I will command it to go and fight against the low-level insect beasts. The other mutated insect beasts, as well as the group of sand insect beasts, will rely on the power of the guard team. Yun Yan played the blue flute for a moment, glanced at the surrounding sand insect beasts in the afterglow, and immediately ordered. Upon hearing this, Yan Bin made a decisive decision and looked at the low-level insect demon in the distance, with a fierce expression flashing across his face. Okay. These low-level sand and insect beasts have no spiritual intelligence. As long as the insect demon dies, it will disperse on its own. I will lead the team and cooperate with Miss Yun Yan to kill that low-level insect demon. Everyone else, immediately protect the goods in the middle and take action quickly. As soon as Yan Bin finished speaking, the entire convoy, which had been slightly flustered, immediately became orderly. Obviously, the reputation of the bearded man in the escort team was extremely high. Yang Qian and Luo Xiaochuan were also at the back of the team, following the orders of the silver armor guard and standing up to protect a giant turtle carrying goods. Open the cage door, Yun Yan gave a cautious command and once again brought the blue flute to his lips, opening his mouth to play. Others dared not neglect, quickly approached, opened the cage door with a click, and then ran away with a fearful and panicked expression. Boom! The wood used to make the carriage shook in an instant. A lion-shaped giant beast, over 2 feet tall, walked out of the cage door, jumped into the sky, and then suddenly fell to the ground. Bang! The violent impact stirred up large amounts of smoke and dust. Ah! The striding lion beast suddenly roared and glared fiercely at the small green figure in front of it, capturing people's huge eyes. Yun Yan's face turned slightly whiter. With a bite of her silver teeth, the bracelet on her white wrist shone brightly. With the sound of the flute, the velociraptor slowly calmed down, only a faint ominous light in her eyes, constantly indicating the ferocity of this monster. At this moment, the escort team had already set up its formation, and the sand insect beast in the distance, under the command of the insect demon, rushed over. A dense and countless low-level sandworm beasts crawled over at an astonishing speed. Pay attention to the northeast direction. The leader has an order to distribute weapons to everyone. Is there still enough spirit stones inside the spiritual tools? Follow the strider lion beast, follow Yen leader to kill. The deafening sound of fighting spread throughout the entire wasteland. Behind the team, Luo Xiaochuan looked at the group of sand, insects, and beasts not far ahead, his face turning a bit pale. He trembled and said, "Brother Yang, do you think we will be okay this time?" Before Yang Qian could reply, Luo Xiaochuan held the wolf tooth stick he had just distributed and muttered to himself with a resolute expression, "There won't be anything wrong, Brother Yang. You're right. The Holy Emperor has become one of the 3 emperors of the human race with his mortal body. How can we give up easily and kill the human race?" Luo Xiaochuan, holding a big stick, unexpectedly rushed into the sandworm herd alone. Yang Qian's gaze flickered slightly, he remained silent and inexplicably followed. Puzzy! A sandworm beast broke its entire body in 2 and spat blood outwards. Reaching out to wipe off the extremely disgusting and foul-smelling blood on his face, Yang Qian smiled indifferently. Bully yourself again and move forward. The huge wolf tooth stick in his hand suddenly smashed the head of the sandworm beast in front of him. The sticky juice splashed most of Yang Qian's body in an instant. End of this chapter. Chapter 4. Diamond Technique Level 2 Technique. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 4 Diamond Technique Level 2 Technique. When Yang Qian stood his wolf tooth stick on the ground, bouncing up a piece of broken stone. He casually tore off his limbs and arms, and Yang Qian turned his head to scan around. Ow! The striding lion beast is still ferocious and terrifying, with its fangs open and it collides head-on with the insect demon. Half of its fur has been torn off, and on its massive body, black and red blood flows down like a stream, gurgling. Although the insect demon on the opposite side was also heavily injured, judging from its appearance, the damage was not considered severe. With this striding lion beast, Yun Yan, Yan Bin, and others have already surrounded the insect demon. Although the winner has not yet been determined in a short period of time, more than 10 silver armor guards have died in the hands of the insect demon. The broken wolf tooth stick and shattered silver armor scattered all over the ground, and with the many corpses of the guards, they fell to the ground in a crooked manner. A man surnamed Wu and Su Ming were also injured to varying degrees, and Yan Bin, a bearded man, was already covered in blood. The golden ring machete in his hand flickered with light, and the cold air was overwhelming, giving him the strength of his dancing tiger. On the handle of the knife, there are 5 colorful spirit stones that are the size of beans, shining brilliantly. Obviously, they are also valuable spiritual tools. As for Yun Yan, she held a blue flute in both hands and was escorted by 3 white maids behind her, playing a solemn and melodious tune. It seems that if the stalemate continues, the situation may not be very good. Not only Yun Yan and Yan Bin, but also other security personnel, the situation is somewhat bad. Those mutated insect beasts, although they have also been killed many times in the battles of many silver armor guards, cannot resist the huge number. There are countless ordinary sandworms left, but with the hard shell of a giant turtle, they can barely stand undefeated. Even if there are a few casualties of silver armor personnel, there can still be guards from behind quickly pushing forward. Those Taoists from Lushan can really sit still. The battle is already so intense, and they are still trapped inside the carriage. If they were to take the initiative, with their cultivation during the foundation building period, they would probably be able to solve the battle quickly. Yang Qian weighed in his heart, but his hand movements never stopped. A fierce expression flashed across his face. Yang Qian fiercely counterattacked, intending to kill the sand insect beast behind him who was preparing to launch a surprise attack. Unexpectedly, he hit the beast's hard armor. Chung chung. The piercing collision sound spread in all directions, and the intense impact force blew away the surrounding sand and stones. There are too many, and Yang Qian furrowed his brow. If it weren't for the fact that I had already achieved some success in the first layer of my diamond technique, I thought to myself that if I had survived this beast tide, I might have found a weak spot in the sandworm beast group and fled. It's not a big deal to find a hidden place, open the door to heaven and earth, and directly return to the human world. This crisis is naturally not a concern. Not to mention this group of mindless sand insects and beasts, even the amazing power of refining emptiness and combining realm, it is impossible to forcefully open the door to their own world. The gate of Qiankuan Yang Qian speculated that there may not be such a powerful treasure in the immortal world, comparable to the Zhang Tian Guan in Han Li's hand, each with its own unique strengths. Between these thoughts, several screams of agony were heard. Hurry up! Block the gap and retrieve his spirit tools. A guard wearing silver armor shouted loudly, with an anxious expression on his face. The companion beside him was unexpectedly attacked and killed by a mutated insect beast that suddenly appeared, along with the body and spiritual tools in his hand, but could not be recovered. It's Uncle Ma. Luo Xiaochuan's face suddenly changed, and in a state of grief, he suddenly waved his wolf-tooth stick in his hand. Get lost. Luo Xiaochuan's face was heavy with pain, and he pushed back all the sand and insect beasts in front of him. Without hesitation, he walked towards the body of the man surnamed Ma, with red eyes and a crazy appearance. Yang Qian effortlessly smashed the heads of 2 sandworm beasts, and even glanced at the man surnamed Ma, whose tentacles were curled up by the sandworm beasts, and couldn't help but take 2 more glances at the object in their hands. Yang Qian shook his head secretly as he glanced at Luo Xiaochuan's reckless behavior. It's still the nature of a teenager. Since a person is already dead, what if they try to retrieve the body? It is unwise to trap oneself in such a dangerous situation. Yang Qian fought and retreated, calmly moving back a few steps, preparing to retreat to the center of the entire defensive circle of the trade, avoiding the danger at the edge. Unexpectedly, the next roar made Yang Qian stop his figure. What is in Ma Yuan's hand? It's a spiritual tool called Water Cloud Sword. What? How could this thing be in his hands? Several silver-armored guards nearby spoke loudly, with a hint of hesitation on their faces. Upon hearing this, Yang Qian quickly glanced at the man surnamed Ma with a calm expression. He was indeed holding a 4-foot-long sword in deep blue, with 4 spirit stones of different colors embedded in the hilt. It was similar to the sharp sword in the hands of Yan Bin and others before, and there was nothing special about it. Is this water cloud sword very powerful? Yang Qian, who had originally retreated, hesitated slightly as he watched Luo Xiaochuan rush into the herd. He continued to fight against the sandworm beast at the edge, hoping to relieve some of Luo Xiaochuan's pressure. Central position of the fleet. A dark man with only a few bone fragments for self-defense rushed towards the low-level insect beast battle circle at the forefront, shouting anxiously at Yan Bin and others. Due to the distance and the constant sound of battles on the battlefield, Yang Qian only heard a few intermittent words such as, "Take it back," "highly valuable," and "second-level magic spells." Yan Bin hesitated for a moment on his face, and suddenly, on his idle left hand, a few bundled yellowed pages flashed out and threw them to the dark man. His lips opened and closed, and he didn't know what to explain. Yang Qian slightly froze and pondered the second-level magic technique, waving his hands non-stop, but his heart began to murmur. Are the bound yellowed pages the one I thought they were? As for retrieving, it is probably related to the water cloud sword. Ordinary spiritual tools are only slightly stronger than low-level magical tools, comparable to medium to high-level magical tools, and are also rare in mortal teams. I think water cloud sword is not an ordinary low-level magic weapon, otherwise the team wouldn't be so anxious. Sure enough, the young man with a dark face took something with a surprised expression, turned around, and walked away, able to dodge the obstruction of sand and insect beasts, running towards the position where Yang Qian was. Leader Yan has an order to pursue that sand insect beast. The water cloud sword must be recaptured. You too, as well as Lao Meng and Xingyun, the dark young man loudly called out the names of several guards. The person who was called out had a complex expression and furrowed brows, indicating some dissatisfaction. Leader Yan has already said that as long as you wait to retrieve the water cloud sword, you can receive an additional low-level spiritual tool upon your return. Okay. It's my duty to do so. It is our responsibility to retrieve the water cloud sword. Upon hearing these words, several people's faces changed rapidly, and they all shouted back loudly without looking back and rushed out. The many guards who were not named next to them all had envious expressions on their faces. For ordinary people without spiritual roots, even exchanging their life for a low-level spiritual tool is extremely worthwhile. As for the Yang brothers, the dark young man paused slightly and threw the yellowed pages tied up in his hand. Brother Rong, what does this mean? Yang Qian was taken aback and asked in surprise. This is the text and annotation of the second layer of the diamond technique. Leader Yan specially instructed me to give this item directly to Brother Yang. After the matter is completed, there will be a heavy thank you. The dark man chopped up the sand insect beast beside him, his face serious. Yang Qian couldn't help but be stunned, his heart filled with ecstasy. Even though there was already a hint of speculation, upon learning that the long-awaited second layer of the diamond technique had been so easily delivered to oneself, I still felt a bit unreal. As for the other party's words of further thanks, Yang Qian did not take them to heart. The journey to regain the water cloud sword was fraught with many difficulties. The other guards were all allowed low-level spiritual tools, while I was only the second-level mnemonic of a body refining technique. In comparison, I knew which one was more important. However, the most important goal of this trip has been achieved, and Yang Qian's heart is relieved. Regardless of whether the water cloud sword can be recaptured in the end, he only needs to find a hidden place, open the door to heaven and earth, and return to the human world. Although he had a lot of thoughts in his heart, on his face, Yang Qian showed a sense of righteousness and awe. Since it was entrusted by Brother Yan, I will definitely do my best. Yang Qian said without hesitation, quickly stuffing the bound yellowed pages into his arms. The dark man's mouth twitched and he let out a few silent dry smiles before turning around and leaving. End of this chapter. Chapter 5. Rescue. Pick up the water cloud sword. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 5 Rescue. Pick up the water cloud sword. Yang Qian's face remained unchanged, and he once again looked around the convoy of the shop. Seeing everyone still exerting all their strength to resist the sandworm herd, I pondered a little in my heart. Yang Qian smashed 2 sandworm beasts with a stick and headed towards the man surnamed Ma, who was taken away by the sandworm beast. Good opportunity. After running far away, you can wait for the opportunity to return to the human realm. As for the matter of retrieving the water cloud sword, if it does not endanger oneself, one can also give it a try. Yang Qian ran wildly all the way, with a faint golden glow emanating from his body. It is a sign that the first layer of the diamond technique is about to be completed. Shi. As Yang Qian advanced, he waved his huge wolf-toothed stick and killed all the sand and insect beasts around him. Blood splattered everywhere, limbs flew horizontally, and the ground was covered in thick and foul-smelling juice, making me extremely nauseous. Yang Qian did not deliberately avoid it. His chest, back, face, and head were all stained with the foul-smelling blood of the sandworm, and there were even a few forelimbs of the sandworm mixed with Yang Qian's collar. It's really disgusting. Yang Qian furrowed his brows unintentionally, bent his finger and flicked it, scattering the knuckles of the demon beast around his neck. Compared to the lower-level cultivators in the Qi refining period, these low-quality demon beasts without spiritual intelligence are still inferior, almost unable to walk a turn in Yang Qian's hands. There were too many helpless numbers, and the almost non-stop attacks made Yang Qian slightly pant, with beads of sweat as big as beans covering his body. It would be great if we could retrieve and use the fallen silver armor protective spirit tools in the convoy. Yang Qian sighed in his heart. Although not everyone has spiritual tools in their hands, even with silver armor guards, the merchant fleet has already lost 30 to 40 people in a short period of time. Overall, there are still 3 to 5 spiritual tools available. Unfortunately, Yan Bin, the great Han with long beards, is truly a seasoned team leader. He had already arranged for the fallen spiritual tools to be retrieved by Yan Bin's trusted subordinates in a timely manner. Recovered huge losses for the Tiandong Trading Company. The water cloud sword is an exception. If this high-quality spiritual artifact cannot be retrieved, even if Yan Bin leads the convoy safely to the destination, there may be a lot of accountability. However, this move is quite dangerous. Leave the convoy and go to the sandworm herd to retrieve it. Yan Bin himself was unwilling to take this risk, so he offered heavy benefits to several strong security guards, hoping that they could retrieve the water cloud sword. As for whether anyone will take possession of the water cloud sword and flee without authorization, this is a bit overthinking. In the spiritual realm, there are many dangers, and not to mention these cultivators who cannot even compete with those who build foundations. Even cultivators who transform gods and refine emptiness dare not claim to be able to protect themselves. It is unwise to abandon one's identity as a business guardian for the sake of a spiritual artifact. However, if you obtain the water cloud sword and have a way to leave safely. On Yang Qian's calm face, the corner of his mouth suddenly curled, and a sparkling golden light burst out. He accelerated rapidly and rushed out of the sand, insect, and animal swarm that was besieging the convoy. He glanced slightly, found the direction of the water cloud sword, and chased after it. Quickly, Yang Qian disappeared from the sight of many guards at the Tiandong Trading Company. Yan Bin, Yun Yan, and others were nervously fighting against the insect demon, with no time to pay attention to the situation behind the merchant convoy. Except for a few people who glanced from a distance, the rest of them did not pay attention to the whereabouts of Yang Qian and others. The sound of shouting, fighting, and screams. The battle between the Tiandong Trading Company and the Sandworm Beast Group is still ongoing. A piece of wasteland far away from the battlefield of the Tiandong commercial convoy. After Yang Qian bypassed a patch of bushes, a rapid shout came over. Hurry up. Brother Lin, give me a helping hand. No. Help me. Ah. Ogawa, block this beast. Yang Qian's gaze fixed, and the situation was somewhat unfavorable. The countless sand and insect herds in front of me have surrounded Luo Xiaochuan and a weathered old man wearing silver armor. The two of them were heavily injured, covered in bloodstains and disheveled. It goes without saying that Luo Xiaochuan, relying solely on his wolf tooth stick in his hand, barely defended himself and was already in danger. The old man, however, exuded great power. In his palm, wearing animal skin gloves, he swung out a series of deep blue sword lights. Any sand and insect beasts that approached were all destroyed by a single blow. However, the old man was clearly feeling physically exhausted and seemed somewhat powerless in the face of the oncoming sand insect beast. Shuiyun sword. Yang Qian was slightly surprised that the water cloud sword had been held by the old man. Is this person surnamed Meng? But he clearly didn't have silver armor before. Could it be Yang Qian calmly killed the sand and insect beasts around him? After catching a glimpse of the other three people, he understood and slowly approached them. The other three corpses were lying in a chaotic pit, with one person without armor and the other two having several pieces of broken bone armor hanging down. Obviously, one of them had their silver armor scraped off by an old man surnamed Meng. The bodies of these three people were constantly being nibbled on by sand and insect beasts, with flesh and blood flying everywhere, and the sound of grinding teeth was extremely penetrating. As for the body of the man surnamed Ma, which had already been devoured by sand and insect beasts, Luo Xiaochuan tightly grasped two pieces of cloth from each other's robes, his face filled with grief. When he saw Yang Qian coming here, he was shocked and showed a surprised expression. Brother Yang. Are you Yang Qian? The face under the armor of the old man surnamed Meng showed a bright expression. He, who had already felt hopeless, seemed to see hope for survival. Brother Yang. Come and help me. The old man surnamed Meng suddenly erupted, sweeping open large areas of sand and insect beasts. He fought and retreated, running towards Yang Qian's position, followed closely by Luo Xiaochuan. Finally, he glanced at the body of the man surnamed Ma and escaped without hesitation. I'm also a bit weak. Hurry up and repel the sand and insect beasts around you. Yang Qian whispered. The first layer of the diamond technique's power was fully activated, and the wolf-toothed stick in his hand was full of energy. Countless shadows shot out. Surprisingly, an escape route was opened for the elderly man surnamed Meng and Luo Xiaochuan. He. Thank you, Brother Yang. The old man surnamed Meng suddenly gave a strange laugh, and under the incredible gaze of Luo Xiaochuan, he pushed back Yang Qian's figure with a sword, causing the two of them to be surrounded by sand and insect beasts in an instant. As for the old man surnamed Meng, he burst out laughing wildly and rushed out along the path of Yang Qian's arrival. Young brothers, Xiaochuan brothers, when I return to the business, I will definitely promote your two contributions. Ha ha ha. The old man surnamed Meng rushed forward without looking back, as he was about to pass through the bushes. Brother Yang. It was me who caused you trouble, and I managed to let such a despicable person escape. Luo Xiaochuan's eyes darkened as he used his body to block Yang Qian's sneak attack from a sand and insect beast. Brother Yang, hurry up. I still have 2 heavenly thunder seeds. I had no hope of survival and wanted to die with these sand and insect beasts. Take them and run for your life. Luo Xiaochuan gritted his teeth and stared at the back of the old man surnamed Meng. After hammering a sandworm beast to death, he took out 2 small blue pills, emitting inexplicable thunder and lightning. Surprisingly, it's Tianlizi. Yang Qian was also polite and casually brought it over, which gave Luo Xiaochuan a hint of relief and couldn't help but show a happy smile. Brother Yang, you must be alive. Luo Xiaochuan made a decision in his heart, with a resolute face, ready to use his body to pave a path for Yang Qian. Xiaochuan, before he reaches despair, he may not be able to escape. Yang Qian looked at the figure of the old man surnamed Meng, with a hint of sarcasm on his face. Luo Xiaochuan looked back in surprise and instantly widened his eyes. An incredible scene has appeared. As the old man surnamed Meng was about to leap over the bushes, his smile suddenly stiffened. In his frightened expression, the incredibly strong black snake tail slammed onto the old man surnamed Meng, shattering his silver armor in an instant. The sound of bones breaking was extremely piercing, and the old man surnamed Meng spat out a mouthful of black and red blood with a thud. His body was like lightning and flew back to the feet of Yang Qian and Luo Xiaochuan. At the moment of gasping for breath, the old man surnamed Meng could only gasp in despair as he watched Yang Qian pull out the water cloud sword he was holding tightly in his hand. Then Yang Qian raised his eyebrows again, as if remembering something. With an indifferent expression, he bent down and peeled off the animal skin gloves embedded with small spirit stones from the old man's hand. Puff! The old man surnamed Meng was furious and spewed out black blood, and there was no sound. End of this chapter. Chapter 6. Terrifying monsters return to the human realm. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 6. Terrifying monsters return to the human realm. Under Luo Xiaochuan's stunned expression, Yang Qian quickly put on his animal leather gloves and didn't have time to carefully examine the types of spirit stones on the gloves. Yang Qian was wearing gloves and swung his water cloud sword suddenly. A shimmering radiance shone from the gloves, and an inexplicable aura passed from the hand to the water cloud sword. At the hilt of the water cloud sword, a spirit stone the size of a bean seed instantly shone brightly, enveloping the entire sword body. Buzz! The deep blue sword light, with Yang Qian's rapid swing, killed more than 10 sandworm beasts that surrounded the two with just one strike. In the distance, the undead sandworm beast had also broken its limbs and retreated with a low and miserable cry. Brother Yang, this, Luo Xiaochuan looked shocked and unsure of what to do due to the sudden changes in the situation before him. Now, it's not the time to daydream, Brother Xiaochuan. Yang Qian was full of energy, with the water cloud sword in his hand, giving off a feeling of arrogance over the world. Although he knew it was just an illusion he had experienced when using higher-level tools for the first time. But still excited. Brother Yang. Don't worry about me anymore. With this water cloud sword in hand, with your strength, you can definitely escape. After being shocked, Luo Xiaochuan suddenly turned his head and said to Yang Qian with a resolute expression. Unexpectedly, at the next moment, Luo Xiaochuan suddenly opened his mouth and exclaimed incredulously, Brother Yang, you sting. Suddenly, Yang Qian reached out to his idle left hand and grabbed the bone armor on Luo Xiaochuan's shoulder, shining a dazzling golden light on his hand. Drink it. Yang Qian's eyes widened, he let out a low shout, stretched out all his strength, lifted Luo Xiaochuan's entire body, and in the opponent's stunned and frightened expression, he threw it with all his might, quickly throwing it towards a location with fewer sand and insect beasts. Brother Xiaochuan, take a step first, Yang will arrive soon. Yang Qian suddenly shouted. Before Luo Xiaochuan could react, he had already leaped into the air at a height of over 5 zhang, quickly crossing a distance of almost half a mile and breaking out of the extensive encirclement of sand and insect beasts. Brother Yang, Luo Xiaochuan turned his head in disbelief, unable to imagine that the other party had such great strength, even stronger than the body refiners in his family who practiced Xuanjia skill. You will only drag me down here. Yang Qian saw Luo Xiaochuan hesitating and felt relieved, but his face was full of anger and he shouted, Let's go. With tears in his eyes, Luo Xiaochuan clenched his fist and repelled the 2 sand and insect beasts crawling over him. Without saying a word, he turned his head and ran wildly. Brother Yang, you must be alive. Luo Xiaochuan heard the hissing sound of swords behind him and quickened his pace. Gritting his teeth tightly and exerting all his strength, after a few breaths, Luo Xiaochuan had already run 100 zhang away and quickly disappeared without a trace. Puzzy. Yang Qian's face was calm, and his whole body suddenly jumped into the air, twirling and spinning. A deep blue sword light instantly chopped more than 10 sandworm beasts into pieces, and blood and limbs flew all over the sky, falling to the ground with a rustling sound. Ah! A bloodthirsty roar, accompanied by intense ground vibrations, came from the bottom of the bushes. An oppressive aura emanated faintly. Scream. Countless broken stones and gravel poured into the air, then quickly fell down, and some sand insects couldn't avoid them, even being crushed into mud by the sudden appearance of huge monsters. Poo-poo poo-poo. The exploding sandworm beast turned into puddles of meat and flowed all over the ground. Scorpion. Yang Qian raised his eyebrows, and just now he had a faint sense of palpitations. Unexpectedly, a huge black scorpion emerged from the bushes. The terrifying sharp pliers, with sharp spikes at the tail continuously dripping purple-black juice, fell to the ground and immediately dissolved a hole the size of a baby's head. The stench slowly spread and was extremely toxic. Yang Qian frowned unintentionally. I originally wanted to stop and try this unknown monster hidden under the bushes. With the water cloud sword in my hand, even if I am defeated, even if I cut off some demon body materials, I can go back to the human world and find an alchemist to make a armor for self-defense. This beast, I'm afraid it's close to the peak of a second-level monster. It's really lucky that it didn't attack me when it just passed by. Yang Qian twitched his lips twice. It is clear how much one's own strength is, and it is not easy to barely protect oneself in the face of ordinary second-level monsters. This scorpion not only has a terrifying aura, almost one step away from a third-level monster, but its tail also contains terrifying venom, making it difficult to defend against. It may be difficult to cut off 2 pieces of refining material from it. With a sigh, Yang Qian smiled helplessly. This trip has exceeded my expectations. Not only did I receive the second level of skill mnemonic, but I also picked up a high-level spiritual tool. It's better not to take risks. Go back and successfully cultivate the second layer of the diamond technique, and then consider these things. After a moment of contemplation, Yang Qianlu couldn't stop his hands. A buzzing sound came out, and more than 10 sand and insect beasts instantly turned into powder. Dong dong dong. The huge scorpion-shaped monster roared twice, its demon-like body rushing towards it like a small mountain. Its eyes were red and bloodthirsty, as if it was about to devour Yang Qian alive. Zheng, Yang Qian pulled a sword flower, and the bean-shaped spirit stone on the animal skin glove shimmered slightly, with a strong spiritual power surging into the water cloud sword. Qiang qiang. 2 piercing metallic collisions were heard from the scorpion-shaped monster's shell, creating waves of air ripples. So hard. Yang Qian's pupils contracted slightly. The hardness of this animal's shell is beyond my imagination. Ow. The scorpion-shaped monster seemed to have been completely angered by Yang Qian, accelerating rapidly and instantly came to Yang Qian's front. It lifted its huge double claws and suddenly smashed them down. Boom boom. The violent impact instantly shook away more than 10 sand and insect beasts nearby. Smoke and dust are everywhere, sand and stones are flying down. After several breaths, the smoke gradually dissipated. The 2 bright red eyes of the scorpion-shaped monster stared closely below, leaving only a pit about 10 feet deep and 2 feet in diameter. The cave is filled with broken corpses of sand and insect beasts, apparently killed by scorpion-shaped monsters. But there was no trace of Yang Qian. Ow. The scorpion-shaped monster's eyes became increasingly red and could almost drip blood. With a fierce tail thrust, it shook away more than 10 sand and insect beasts around it. The scorpion-shaped monster roared and turned around, rushing towards its previous position outside the bushes. Squeezing and rustling. Dense and countless sand and insect beasts followed closely behind. Looking at its direction, it is clear that the team of Tiandong Trading Company is located. In just about a stick of incense, many monsters disappeared faintly into the distant smoke and dust. The human realm. Yu State, Jingzhou Caixia Mountain. In a desolate and dilapidated cave, without warning, a thin black line appeared, standing upright in the air, about 1 zhang high. The buzzing sound suddenly rang out, but suddenly came to an end. An incredible scene has appeared. The black thin line suddenly expanded horizontally, transforming into a deep gateway about half a zhang wide, like the flowing light of a cosmic galaxy, slowly flowing and mysterious. A somewhat disheveled figure fell out of the door and hit the ground, causing a large amount of dust and sand. The mysterious portal hanging in the air instantly closed and lost its trace, as if it had never appeared before. The figure falling to the ground cautiously observed from all sides, seeing that the surroundings were still silent, and breathed a sigh of relief with peace of mind. Immediately after, the figure suddenly shook its head and raised its arm, seeming somewhat disdainful. It sniffed the scent on its body, frowned unintentionally, and then stomped its foot, crossing 3 zhang in one step before quickly escaping from the cave and disappearing. End of this chapter. Chapter 7. Manifestation of Saints in Front of Men. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 7 Manifestation of Saints in Front of Men 7 Xian Men. Sunset Peak, outside the 7 mysterious halls. The sound of fighting was incessant, and countless flames illuminated the night almost like daylight. The forces of the 7 profound men and the wild wolf gang, with thousands of people and horses standing in separate rows outside the 7 profound hall. Both were staring intently at the 2 figures facing each other in the field. The difference is that on one side, people show worry and fear on their faces, while on the other side, their faces are red and proud. On the side of the 7 profound gates, the sect leader Wang Juechu was dressed in white clothes and had a long sword with a white scabbard hanging from his waist. His face was extremely cold, and his dazzling eyes stared fixedly at the members of the wild wolf gang not far away. Xu Tian, the leader of the wild wolf gang, stood with his shoulder hugged and glanced at Wang Juechu with a sneer on his face, then turned his gaze to the 2 people in the fierce battle on the field. In the center of the field, a short and ugly dwarf in a long robe, emitting a golden light all over his body, covering his entire body. He stood with a proud face on his hips, looking at the other person with a sinister expression. Across from him was a bearded man with a broad chest and open arms. He suddenly let out a long roar like a dragon's roar, which shook the 2 factions on the entire Sunset Peak. His ears hummed, and an invisible airflow hit the rocks and trees. The crackling sound of the joints came from the bearded man quickly, more and more quickly, like a rainstorm hitting a bucket, and kept ringing. After a few breaths, the sound suddenly stopped. Everyone looked in shock, only to see the man with a beard all over his body, almost swollen more than before. His exposed arms and legs were curved, his muscles were bulging, and his dark green blood vessels were clearly visible, indicating that he was about to emerge from his body. As if transformed into a giant like a small mountain, the people of both factions were all shocked and pale. The dwarf's smug expression slightly narrowed, and he couldn't help but be a bit cautious. He quickly took out a small black box from his pocket. At this time, the bearded strong man's face was sharp, and he leaped over a distance of several meters to the dwarf and launched a storm-like attack. Bang 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 bang. The dwarf's figure shook a few times, his face showing terror, and the golden light shield on his body surface surprisingly deformed and stretched, seeming to be on the verge of collapse. Seeing this scene, the dwarf dared not delay any longer and panicked as he began to curse and recite the mantra. No matter how the bearded giant attacked, he ignored it. This scene was naturally seen by the people of both factions at the peak, both of whom were shocked. Behind a certain pillar at the top of the 7 Xian Hall, a handsome young man wearing a black-sleeved brocade robe, with both hands behind him, gazed down at the center of the battlefield. This person is none other than Yang Qian, who returned from the spiritual realm. On that day, in the spiritual realm, facing the final blow of the scorpion-shaped monster, Yang Qian broke open the gate of the universe, escaped into it, and returned to the human realm. Afterwards, he immediately changed into a new outfit and headed towards the 7 profound gates. Unexpectedly, the wild wolf gang had already attacked the Luoxia peak. When they reached the peak, both sides had already engaged in a final battle. As one of the 3 pillars of the 7 profound schools, this person indeed has some abilities. Yang Qian's gaze was serene, and Wang Jueshu's 3 senior uncles were all extraordinary. They are top experts in the fields of external skills, hidden weapons, and swordsmanship. In this secular martial arts world, it can be considered an invincible existence. Unfortunately, I encountered a cultivator. The dwarf on the opposite side is naturally a super expert in the early stage of mortals, known as the resounding, golden light master. Even if it's just a low-end chi refining tool, once the golden light shield is activated and a flying sword talisman is offered to deal with this top-notch martial arts expert, it can be destroyed by flipping the hand. As the person in the golden light was about to finish reciting the Dharma spell, a cruel and sinister smile gradually appeared on his ugly face. Yang Qian knew that if he didn't take action again, one of the pillars of the 7 Xianmen sect would fly away with his soul. After all, I have been in this door for many years, so let's save his life. Yang Qian let out a sigh. By the way, there aren't many opportunities to show off in front of Erlengzi. Yang Qian chuckled and swayed slightly. With a whoosh, the bricks and tiles under his feet had shattered into pieces, and he disappeared into place in an instant. In the center of the field, the ugly face of Master Jin Guang was full of cruelty, and he grinned harshly. Let me show you the real methods of the immortal family. Under the puzzled gaze of the crowd, Master Jin Guang made several strange postures with his hands, fingers raised together, and suddenly pointed towards the man with a beard. The man with a beard suddenly felt a surge of death approaching him, narrowly avoiding an indistinct gray light. Before he could turn around, he heard another piercing sound of air coming from behind. He wanted to avoid it, but it was already too late. All the members of the 7 Xianmen sect had a great change in their faces. And the members of the Wild Wolf gang settled down and couldn't help but cheer, and Jia Tianlong's tense body also relaxed. Immortal Master has finally shown his power. Jingguang Shangren had a grim smile on his face, as if he had already seen the fearful expression of the other person's death. But the next moment, his expression froze. At this moment of life and death crisis, an incredible scene has happened. A large hand that appeared out of thin air appeared in front of the gray light in an instant, and without hesitation, it firmly grasped the mysterious object that was invisible to the naked eye in its hand. Bang bang! The sound of metal weapons colliding fiercely came from that big hand, with a deafening scream that shook the entire Luoxia peak. The crackling sparks burst and fell when the big hand collided with the gray on. The gray flowing light seemed to struggle and sway back and forth, but with a cold snort and a sudden tightening of its hand, the gray light seemed to emit a desperate cry of sorrow. The radiance dissipated and turned into a thin and delicate talisman paper, which was suddenly held in the hand of the figure who appeared. Brother Yang! Many disciples exclaimed in surprise. Yang Qian, the head of the 7 Xianmen sect, Wang Juechu, and his 3 senior uncles were all staring at the black figure in the center of the field in disbelief. Yang Qian, dressed in a black-sleeved brocade robe, didn't look at the fearful expression on the person's face in the golden light. He first lowered his head to examine the talisman on his fingers. On this talisman paper, there is a vivid portrayal of a gray small sword, with a handle, body, and various details all present. Even if it is not stimulated now, it still emits a faint crystal-clear light, with a chilly feeling. Fu Bao. Yang Qian's gaze fixed, but unfortunately, this thing was completely unusable for his current self. However, it is not a loss to make a deal with the future Han Tianzuan. Yang Qian flipped his finger and, under the incredible gaze of the 2 factions, put the talisman into the storage bag. Giving Wang Juechu and others a reassuring look, Yang Qian scanned a circle of disciples from the 7 profound gates and paused for a moment on a young man with dark skin. This person, of course, is the future Han Tianzuan, the current Han doctor of the 7 Xianmen Divine Hand Valley, and the former Erlengzi. Yang Qian gave him a slight smile, which made Han Li's heart tremble with suspicion. The feeling of regret that I had slowed down a step and failed to capture the gray light gradually calmed down. Senior brother Yang, are you also a cultivator? Han remained calm on the facade, his mind churning with contemplation. I recall that since I started, although I was not a close friend with senior brother Yang, we were quite familiar. In addition, this time, the other party turned the tide in the critical moment of the collapse of this sect. Do you want to have a conversation with Senior Yang? Although this move may be risky, I believe that with Senior Brother Yang's honest and upright personality over the years, he will be willing to help me clarify. Han Li made a secret decision and fixed his gaze on the field. I saw Yang Qian scanning around with a smile on his face, then turning around. His face suddenly changed, and he stared at the golden dwarf in front of him with indifference. End of this chapter. Chapter 8. Kill the enemy with one punch. Senior Brother Yang has boundless magical power. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8. Kill the enemy with one punch. Senior Brother Yang has boundless magical power. What kind of person are you? I have no intention of being enemies with you. The golden light dwarf slowly retreated 2 steps, his face full of nervousness and fear. This young man in a black brocade robe, full of supernatural powers, surprisingly grabbed his talisman tightly with one hand. It was unheard of and unseen. At this moment, the golden light master had already lost his previous energy. I am already extremely afraid in my heart, and I only hope that the other party can let me go and save my life. Yang Qian remained unmoved and slowly walked forward. Da-da-da. The sound of footsteps, like a desperate blow, stimulated the nerves of the person on the golden light. Xu Tianlong and others exchanged a few glances and slowly took a step back, but thousands of people from behind wanted to escape and were afraid of attracting the attention of the black-clothed man in the center of the long hall. They were really a bit conflicted. This golden light immortal boasted in front of me about his incredible strength, but he didn't kill anyone and was taken away by someone. It's likely that the heavens are going to kill my wild wolf gang. Xu Tianlong's face looked ugly and his heart became increasingly uneasy. I am a disciple of the Yi family in Qin Yiling, and I have only been passing by here. Due to my old relationship with Xu Tianlong, the leader of the wild wolf gang, I reluctantly took action under the opponent's influence, which caused some losses in your sect. Since I have already appeared, I will withdraw from your sect. I hope you can forgive me. In front of the Yi family in Qin Yiling, please let me go and I will definitely come to your door to thank you in the future. The ugly face of Master Jin Guang was full of restraint, with 2 small eyes dripping and a faint sense of fear. The color of fear. Oh. Qin Yiling and the Yi family. Yang Qian's originally indifferent face suddenly showed a hint of surprise, as if he was surprised by the other person's background. Master Jin Guang was instantly delighted and quickly said, "Exactly, brother." Ah! A rapid burst of air echoed across the entire Sunset Peak. Whether it was the Wild Wolf Gang or the 7 Xian men, everyone stared blankly at the 2 people in the field. To be precise, it was the handsome young man in a black brocade robe on the field. It seems that I cannot believe what my eyes see. The golden mask, which left everyone helpless, was easily shattered with a punch from Yang Qian. Just one punch. The impenetrable golden light shield is like a thin cicada wing, directly penetrated. Puzzy. Jingguang Shangren suddenly froze in place, looking incredulously at his chest. Wearing an unknown animal skin glove, the fist was right in the center of his heart. Vast patches of blood trickled down the ground, and the eyes of the person in the golden light instantly dimmed and lifeless. I saw Yang Qian expressionlessly pull out his right hand. His fist, wearing animal skin gloves, didn't even have a drop of blood on it, and he was still incredibly handsome. Master Jin Guang opened his mouth and wanted to say something, but he could no longer support himself. With a snap, the body of Jingguang Shangren slowly fell to the ground, and soon, black and red blood flowed from beneath the body. Senior brother Yang is so amazing. Han Li's eyes twitched in the crowd, his face full of shock. In the field. With a casual move by Yang Qian, the beastly spirit stone hidden on the animal skin glove emitted a faint fluorescence, and several things flew out of the person in the golden light. Not much, only 3 pieces. A talisman, a token, and a book. Yang Qian is very familiar with this and doesn't need to study it in detail. This talisman is the Golden Light Mask talisman that was just used by the Golden Light Master. Although it was punched by Yang Qian, the damage to the talisman was minimal. Judging from its spiritual energy, it can still be used a few times. For Yang Qian, this item was of no use. With the almost complete body of his Vajra technique, breaking through the golden light shield was an easy move. There was no need to keep such a low-level talisman. However, Erlengzi currently lacks this kind of self-defense talisman. I want to exchange it for elixirs. It's rare to find spiritual elixirs for refining the body. Tokens don't need to be said much, you can understand if you understand them, it's the order to ascend to immortality. It is also useless to Yang Qian. Without spiritual roots, even with the Ascension Order, it is impossible to enter the Yellow Wind Valley. Besides, being able to cross the spiritual realm, before opening the spiritual route, one can only improve their cultivation by refining their body, and the diamond technique is their main cultivation method. As for the final book, it is the genealogy of the Qin family in Yiling, Qin. When Yang Qian saw this object, he couldn't help but tug at the corner of his mouth. In fact, Jin Guang dwarf was originally a disciple of the Qin family in Qin Yiling, and his family had once intermarried with the Yi family. Later, with the passage of time, the Qin family declined, but the Yi family flourished and wanted to destroy the Qin family and seize the treasures left by its ancestors. Although the cultivation level of Master Jin Guang was low, he was able to escape with some treasures and successfully escaped. But also because he was afraid of the Yi family, he dared not go to the Immortal Ascension Conference, so he had to wander among the mortal gangs and eventually became a treasure-giving boy. Yang Qian scrutinized the object in his hand and pondered inwardly. This item can be given as a gift to Erlengzi as a way to spare his head. Taking advantage of the fact that the other party does not understand the common sense of the cultivation world, he can also collect a handful of wool. When he becomes the feared Han Lao Mo, it will be difficult to deceive him again. When Yang Qian thought of this, Han Tianzuan, who was looking forward to the future, looked back on his expression when he recalled what happened today. With a curl of his mouth, Yang Qian put these 3 things into his storage bag. Fortunately, in the spiritual realm, I learned the language of the spiritual realm and was able to use the magic in the gloves to open the storage bag. Otherwise, if I were like a person refining in the human realm, without storage tools, my future journey would be too difficult. Unfortunately, we can only achieve this level. The various spells of a cultivator cannot be released by their current self. Shaking his head, Yang Qian then looked towards the already panicked members of the Wild Wolf gang. Jia Tianlong's expression was already hard to see, with fear, panic, and bitterness all hidden in silence. On the other hand, on the side of the 7 profound gates, there was a lot of cheering. The sect leader Wang Juechu, as well as his 3 senior uncles, were all looking at Yang Qian in the complex and difficult to understand. The figure, dressed in a black robe, seemed to have grown incredibly tall. Senior brother Yang is mighty. Senior brother Yang is invincible in the world. Senior brother Yang has boundless magical power. Many disciples of the 7 Xianmen sect shouted out together, their voices shaking the sky and earth, echoing throughout the entire Luoxia peak. Just shouting slogans made Yang Qian feel embarrassed and inexplicably touch his nose. From now on, I'm afraid the weather will change. Wang Juechu's eyes were bright, and a passionate expression appeared on his face. For so many years, Yang Qian's personality has long been familiar to everyone, and with this effort to turn the tide, they are not worried that Yang Qian will have malicious intentions. This time, I'm afraid it's the rise of the 7 mysteries. behind the crowds of people at the 7 gates. A dark boy's face was filled with astonishment. Han Li looked extremely conflicted. Just now, when he saw senior brother Yang waving from afar, he took out 3 items from the ugly dwarf, which didn't look ordinary, plus the talisman paper that could be transformed into a flying sword. How to exchange 1 or 2 treasures from senior brother Yang's hands? Han Li frowned unintentionally and began to contemplate. Huanglong pill, Qingling powder, Jinsui pill, and nourishing essence pill are rare and rare medicines in the outside world. I wonder if they can meet the needs of senior Yang. Huanglong Dan and Jinsui Wan both have the magical effects of improving martial arts skills and transforming oneself. Although rare in the world, Han Li still lacks any confidence. After all, whether it was just Yang's senior brother holding the flying sword talisman paper in a blink of an eye, or punching the imposing golden light venerable, he couldn't see the opponent's actions clearly. This indicates that Yang's senior brother's cultivation may still be above his own, and he needs to carefully consider what to do. Han Li lowered his gaze and couldn't help but fall into deep thought. End of this chapter. Chapter 9. Martial Myth. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The source has no content or has errors. Chapter 10. Han Pao comes. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 10. Han Pao comes in the quiet room behind the altar. Yang Qian sat comfortably on a grand tutor's chair, with a curious expression on his face. Is this the order to ascend to immortality? Unfortunately, it's useless to me, but... Yang Qian's eyes moved slightly, calculating the time, it should also come. The black triangular sign in his hand was the ascension token that Yang Qian had snatched from the hands of the Golden Light Master. Although it was useless to Yang Qian, it was extremely important to another person. Believe that even if the other party is cautious, facing a true cultivator, they will still lose their composure. Besides, I didn't have any ill intentions towards him, I just wanted to pick up some wool. Collecting wool is not considered malicious, is it? To put it this way, I helped Han Pao win this ascension token, and he still needs to thank me. Yang Qianzhan smiled, admiring his style and broad-mindedness. Yang Qian raised his head slightly and sensed the figure outside the door. Although I don't have a spiritual root and can't cultivate magic, I can still detect the general wind and grass around me, but I don't have as comprehensive divine consciousness. With a sudden wave of his left hand and a creak, the originally closed door suddenly opened. Ha ha ha. Junior brother Han, since he has already arrived, there is no need to hide or hide. Yang Qian sat on the grand tutor's chair, majestically motionless, but with a loud smile, he called out to break through Han Li's trace. At this moment, the worship hall has already been disbanded by Yang Qian and all the disciples of the 7 Xianmen sect. Only Yang Qian is left here, there is no need to hide it anymore. After a few breaths, no one came out. Yang Qian's face showed a helpless expression, deserving of being Han Pao who retreated behind everyone. Even in the 7 Xianmen, he was still cautious. After a moment of contemplation, On Lan's eyes rolled and gently swept towards a corner of the courtyard. Just as he was about to stand up and force him to appear, Yang Qian suddenly paused with a strange smile on his face. Yang Qian remained motionless, holding the right hand of the Immortal Ascension Order and quickly lifted it, throwing the pitch-black token in his palm without hesitation. Without using all his strength, the black triangle token spun along a parabolic path, crossing the door and courtyard. Looking at its direction, it is exactly where a certain idiot is hiding. The pitch-black token flew over the highest point and suddenly began to fall, getting lower and lower, until one hand reached out from behind the cover without warning. Clack! With a big hand, he grabbed the black ascension token in his hand. A young man hiding behind him had a complex expression and hesitated for a moment. In the end, he seemed to sigh, let out a bitter smile, and walked out from behind. Ordinary face, dark skin. It is the future Han Tianzuan, who was once a fool. The current owner of Xinshou Valley is Yang Qian's good junior brother. Han Li. Han Li, holding the order to ascend to immortality, hesitated for a moment before pacing towards the quiet room of the worship hall where Yang Qian was located. Seeing Han Li already walk in, Yang Qian had a smile on his face and waved his hand. The door of the room where the hall was enshrined was closed again, and the entire room suddenly darkened by 3 minutes. Han Li's face tightened and he immediately stopped, staring at Yang Qian with caution, while scanning the room without leaving a trace. Junior brother Han, there's no need to be nervous. You and my senior brothers have been together for many years, and you probably don't understand my personality. Yang Qian stood up, put his hands on his back, and walked a few steps with his head raised. Han Li's body suddenly became tense, inexplicably thinking of Dr. Mo, who was no longer in the world. At that time, they were also in such a closed-door room and engaged in a life-and-death battle. With Yang Qian's footsteps, Han Li's heart gradually lifted. 1 step. 2 steps. 3 steps. In the end, Yang Qian listened 3 feet in front of Han Li and the two of them looked at each other face to face. Yang Qian smiled brightly, while looking at Han Li. Although his face was calm, there was a hint of vigilance and hesitation in his eyes. A person with a fair complexion and a dignified appearance. A person with dark skin and an ordinary appearance. Han Li was slightly surprised and lowered his eyes to look at Yang Qian's outstretched right hand. Immediately thinking of something, he lifted his arm with a calm expression and gently placed the black triangular token in his hand into Yang Qian's palm. That's right. Junior brother Han doesn't need to be nervous. There is no malice for him, but instead, there is a chance to bestow upon him. Yang Qian smiled slightly and was very satisfied with Han Li's attitude. My younger martial brother Han, whether now or in the future, although he cannot be called a good person, he is extremely principled. Of course, if the other party knew the value of the Ascension Order, I wonder if they would simply return it to themselves. Yang Qian suddenly had a hint of evil interest and said with a strange smile, Junior brother Han is probably very curious about how I have the current strength, and I'm afraid I have some thoughts about that dwarf's things. Yang Qian casually threw the black triangle token into the air, spinning it dozens of times at lightning speed, and then it landed in the palm of his hand. Han Li's corner of his eye twitched and said nonchalantly, Senior brother Yang is joking. These are all his spoils of war. How dare junior brother have any thoughts? However, junior brother also achieved success in cultivation unexpectedly. I would like to ask some questions from senior brother Yang. Oh. Yang Qian showed a perfectly surprised expression, then looked up and down at Han Li for a moment, followed by both surprise and solemnity. I didn't expect that on weekdays, if you don't show the mountains or the water, you already have an 8th level cultivation in the Qi refining period, junior brother Han. Yang Qian currently has no mana, so he is unable to practice the heavenly eye technique and check the cultivation of others. However, since crossing over time, he has basically not changed Han Li's life trajectory. Based on his own memory, Han Run at this time has reached the 8th level of Qi refining, which should not be wrong. Yang's senior brother is indeed a fellow disciple of the same sect. A few years ago, he unexpectedly obtained a cultivation technique. Not long ago, he was lucky enough to advance to the 8th level of the Qi refining stage. Unexpectedly, he was defeated by senior brother at a glance. Han Li's face remained unchanged and he replied with a smile. Under my heart, there was a chill, and senior brother Yang was indeed not easy. I see. Yang Qian smiled inexplicably and didn't pay much attention. Instead, he pondered slightly and said, Junior brother Han, it's probably difficult for you to improve in these 7 mystical sections. Only by entering the 7 major immortal cultivation sects of our country can you go further, and even a glimpse of the path of immortality is unknown. But I don't know what kind of spiritual root Han junior brother has. Coincidentally, I have been carrying the spiritual root testing tool in my brother's sect all along, so I can test it for Han Junior brother. If my spiritual root is poor, my hope of entering the 7 great sects may be slim. At this moment, Han Tianzuan was almost completely ignorant of the common sense in the cultivation world. Yang Qian seized this opportunity and naturally couldn't miss it. He happened to be a guide and established his position as a senior brother from then on. Yang Qian's thoughts were racing and he felt that this matter was feasible. Not to mention it himself, when he arrives at the Tainan small meeting, Han Li will eventually know various common knowledge about cultivating immortals. It's better to speak it out on his own, sell it as a favor, and ask for some miraculous pills in the future. I think Han Li can also give himself a family price. Sure enough, upon hearing this, Han Li's face showed an incredible shock. End of this chapter.